Today, we're diving into the story of how a television superstar, someone beloved by millions, was executed in broad daylight on her own doorstep. It's a case that kicked off one of the biggest police investigations in British history, a case that actually led to a conviction and then completely, utterly fell apart, leaving a mystery that's still unsolved to this day. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's a quiet, sunny spring morning in Fulham, a pretty well-off part of London. The date is Monday, April 26, 1999, and it's a day that would end with the entire nation in absolute shock.
The details that came out were just chilling. I mean, this wasn't a struggle, it wasn't a robbery gone wrong, no. This was a swift, cold, and deeply personal attack. You could even call it a calculated execution. The killer held her, fired one single shot to her temple, and then just vanished.
To really understand the shockwaves this sent out, you first have to understand who the victim was. This wasn't just any citizen. This was a face known and loved in millions of homes right across the country.
The victim was Jill Dando, the absolute golden girl of British television. She was a newsreader, a presenter on the travel show Holiday, and maybe most famously, the co-host of Crime Watch, a program dedicated to helping the police solve crimes. The irony of that, well, it wouldn't be lost on anyone.
Her career was just incredible. I mean, she started out in local radio and then just shot up, becoming this constant, trusted presence on national TV, reading the news, and fronting these huge primetime shows. By 1999, she was at the absolute peak of her career. And right here, this is the first major puzzle in the case. The technique itself, pressing the gun right to the temple, was professional. It muffled the sound, it limited the forensic evidence. But the weapon? It was a modified, almost amateurish, blank-firing gun. This strange mix of professional skill and a crude weapon would baffle investigators for years.
Now, with a case this high profile, the pressure was just immense. The police investigation, codenamed Operation Oxborough, was one of the largest in modern British history. And after a full year of dead ends, their focus suddenly narrowed, zeroing in on one man, Barry George. He was a local guy who seemed to fit the psychological profile of a loner who was obsessed with celebrities. And when the police searched his apartment, they found all this stuff that seemed to confirm their suspicions. We're talking photos of hundreds of women, notes on TV personalities, and even a picture of himself holding a handgun. The trial against Barry George was built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. The prosecution's case basically hinged on one single piece of forensics: a microscopic particle of firearm residue found in his coat pocket. They also pointed to his weird behavior after the murder as an attempt to create a fake alibi. But the defense fired back, saying the residue could just be contamination. And then they offered this explosive alternative theory. This wasn't a random act, it was a political assassination.
So after a long trial that had the whole nation watching, the jury came back guilty. Barry George was sentenced to life in prison. And for a while, it seemed like for Jill Dando's family and for the public, justice had finally been served.
But this was nowhere near the end of the story, not even close. The doubts that were always kind of lingering around the conviction would eventually grow into a full-blown legal challenge that would turn the entire case right on its head.
So, was the case really closed? I mean, the justice system had delivered its verdict, but those nagging questions about the evidence and the science behind it, well, they were about to tear the whole thing apart.
8 years. After 8 years behind bars and multiple failed appeals, the foundation of the case against Barry George just crumbled. The Court of Appeal quashed his conviction, and he walked out a free man.
So, what happened? Well, it all came down to that one single particle of firearm residue. This case became a landmark moment, really, highlighting the dangers of relying on tiny bits of forensic evidence. The science had evolved, and experts now argued that a single particle, with nothing else to back it up, was basically meaningless. It could have come from anywhere. Police contamination was a very real possibility. So once that key piece of evidence was thrown out, the entire case against him just collapsed. At his retrial in 2008, Barry George was found not guilty.
The acquittal of Barry George sent the investigation right back to square one. I mean, if he didn't do it, who did? And this just blew the doors wide open for all the other theories that the police had once dismissed.
Now, one of the most compelling theories centers on this timeline. Just 3 weeks before her death, Dando presented an appeal for refugees from the Kosovo War. Soon after, NATO controversially bombed the Serbian state TV headquarters. Then, a prominent Serbian journalist was assassinated in Belgrade using the exact same hard contact execution method. So the question became, could Jill Dando's murder have been a direct retaliation for NATO's actions, maybe even ordered by a Serbian warlord?
Of course, the police had investigated a ton of other possibilities from the very beginning. They looked into revenge from some criminal featured on Crime Watch, a jealous lover, an obsessed stalker. But one by one, each of these avenues just led to a dead end. Suspects had solid alibis or no credible motive. With Barry George acquitted, that professional hit theory, which was once on the fringe, suddenly seemed a lot more plausible.
And this is where we stand today. After one of the biggest police investigations in British history, a conviction, an acquittal, the number of people held responsible for the murder of Jill Dando is 0. The case remains, officially, frustratingly, unsolved.
But the story doesn't just end with an unsolved crime, because amid all the tragedy and the mystery, Jill Dando's life and her work have inspired a legacy that's all about progress and education.
In the wake of her death, something really positive has emerged. The Jill Dando Institute at University College London has become a world-leading centre for crime science. There are bursaries that now help aspiring journalists, and memorials in her hometown make sure she's remembered not for her murder, but for the vibrant life she lived.
So this is the question that just hangs over it all, isn't it? Was it a professional hitman, a lone obsessive who somehow got away with it, a tragic case of mistaken identity? More than 2 decades later, the murder of Jill Dando remains one of Britain's most profound and haunting modern mysteries.